Have you ever wondered why, exactly at the moment when your addiction felt strongest, something inside you began to collapse? Why does God allow His chosen ones to sink so deeply before He finally intervenes? There is a design behind this, a hidden sequence that most people will never recognize. Here is the unsettling truth. Your addiction was never just a flaw. It was a shield. A psychological barrier your mind built to avoid confronting the real force inside you, your calling. And God has always seen through that barrier. What you are about to learn will challenge everything you've believed about addiction, destiny, and spiritual growth. Because when God chooses to remove the addiction from one of His chosen, He is not simply taking something away. He is unveiling, redirecting, reshaping the path you were too afraid to walk on your own. In this video, we will uncover the psychological and spiritual mechanics behind this painful yet transformative dismantling. Prepare yourself. What you are about to realize may shake you, but it will also set the foundation for the person you were always meant to become. There is something you need to understand right now. That thing you call your addiction, that behavior you have been fighting against for years, was never the enemy you thought it was. It served a purpose, a very specific one. Your mind created it as protection, not as punishment. Carl Jung spoke extensively about the psyche's defense mechanisms, and what he discovered still shakes the foundations of modern psychology. When life becomes too overwhelming, when the weight of your true purpose starts pressing down on your soul, your unconscious mind does something remarkable. It builds walls. It creates distractions. It gives you something smaller to fight, so you do not have to face the giant waiting outside. Your addiction became that wall. Every time you reached for it, you were not just seeking pleasure or escape. You were avoiding something far more terrifying than withdrawal or shame. You were running from the truth of who you are meant to be, because that truth demands everything from you. It demands change, risk, uncertainty, and the death of the person you have been comfortable being. The addiction asked for much less. It only wanted your time, your health, your relationships, but it let you stay small. It let you stay hidden. Jung called this the shadow, the part of yourself you refuse to see. But the shadow is not just darkness. It also contains your unlived life, your unexpressed power, your abandoned dreams. When you fed your addiction, you were actually feeding the shadow. You were keeping it quiet, keeping it contained. Because if you ever stopped, if you ever let the noise die down, you would hear it. That voice, that pull. That knowing that you were made for something you have been too afraid to claim. God sees this entire structure. He watches you build it brick by brick, year after year. And He does not interrupt. Not yet. Because the shield has to become unbearable first. It has to stop working. You have to realize that what once protected you is now suffocating you. The addiction that numbed the pain starts creating more pain than it ever solved. The escape route becomes the trap. And only then, when you are exhausted from maintaining the illusion, does God begin His work. He does not remove the addiction to punish you. He removes it because the shield has outlived its purpose. You are ready now, whether you feel ready or not. The calling that scared you into hiding is no longer something you can run from. It has grown too loud. It has become too urgent. And the only thing standing between you and that destiny is the very thing you thought was destroying you. So God strips it away, not with your permission, not at your pace. He does it suddenly, strategically, and often without explanation. Because if He waited for you to be ready, you never would be. What you are experiencing right now, this strange absence of desire, this confusion about who you are without the behavior that defined you, this is not emptiness. This is exposure. You are being revealed. Layer by layer, the false self is being dismantled. And underneath, something ancient and powerful is beginning to stir. Something that was always there, waiting for the shield to fall. You mistook your prison for safety. But God is showing you that freedom was always on the other side of surrender. The shield served you well, when you needed it. It kept you functional when everything inside was falling apart. It gave you something to focus on when the real battle felt too big to face. But shields are temporary. They are meant to protect you during a specific season, not to become your permanent home. And what happens when you live behind a shield for too long is that you forget there is a world beyond it. You forget that you were built for open fields, not for hiding. You forget that your calling requires vulnerability, exposure, the willingness to be seen. This is why the removal feels so violent. You were not just losing a habit. You were losing the only defense mechanism you trusted, the only thing that made you feel safe in an unsafe world. And now you are standing in the open with nothing to protect you. This is terrifying. This is disorienting. But this is also exactly where God needs you to be, because your calling cannot be accessed from behind a shield. It requires you to walk into the battlefield with your chest exposed, trusting that what is inside you is stronger than anything that can come against you. You might have asked yourself 1,000 times why it had to get this bad. Why did God let you fall so far before stepping in? Why did He watch you destroy relationships, waste years, lose parts of yourself you will never get back? The answer is not what most people want to hear, but it is the truth that will set you free. God waits because partial destruction does not work. Surface change does not reach the depths where your calling lives. You needed to break completely so that nothing of the old structure remains. Jung understood this better than most. He spoke about the process of individuation, the painful journey of becoming who you truly are. And he was clear about one thing. You cannot become whole by adding to yourself. You become whole by subtracting, by removing every false identity, every borrowed belief, every layer of conditioning that was never yours to begin with. The addiction was part of that false structure. It was a symptom of a life built on the wrong foundation. And God does not renovate, He rebuilds. Think about it. If He had removed your addiction early, when you still had energy to replace it with another distraction, what would have changed? You would have switched one coping mechanism for another. You would have found a new way to avoid the uncomfortable truth pressing against your chest. But when He waits until you break, when He waits until you have nothing left to grab onto, then the removal becomes absolute. There is no replacement. There is only the void. And the void is where transformation happens. This is why your collapse was necessary. The version of you that needed the addiction had to die, not improve, not heal, die. Because that version was never meant to carry what is coming next. Your calling is too heavy for someone still clinging to comfort. Your purpose is too demanding for someone still negotiating with their potential. God needed you empty so He could fill you with something new. He needed you broken so He could rebuild you according to the original design, not the distorted version you created out of fear. Breaking is not failure. Breaking is preparation. Every person who ever walked into their true calling had to be dismantled first. Their ego had to shatter. Their self-image had to collapse. Their certainty about who they were had to dissolve into confusion. Because only in that confusion does the deeper self emerge. Only in that emptiness does the voice of God become clear. When everything you thought you were is stripped away, what remains is what you actually are. And that is what God has been waiting for all along. The timing was never random. He did not forget about you. He was watching the entire time, waiting for the exact moment when your soul was ready to let go. Not when you wanted to let go, but when you were capable of it. When the pain of staying the same finally outweighed the fear of change. When the addiction stopped working and you had nowhere left to hide. That is when He moved. That is when He reached into your life and pulled out the one thing you thought you could not live without. And in that moment, even though it felt like loss, it was actually the beginning of everything. There is a specific kind of breaking that only happens at rock bottom. It is different from the breaking that comes from external pressure or temporary setbacks. This breaking happens in the core of your being. It is the moment when you finally stop pretending, when you stop performing, when you stop trying to hold it all together. You look in the mirror and you do not recognize the person staring back. You cannot remember the last time you felt truly alive. You realize that you have been existing, not living, surviving, not thriving, and something inside you finally gives up the fight. This surrender is sacred. It is the white flag your soul waves when it cannot carry the weight anymore, and God has been waiting for this exact moment. Because as long as you were fighting to maintain control, as long as you believed you could fix yourself, manage yourself, improve yourself into wholeness, He could not do His work. His power is made perfect in weakness. His strength shows up in your surrender. And the breaking you are experiencing right now is not evidence that you failed. It is evidence that you are finally in position to receive what He has been trying to give you all along. Most people never break completely. They break just enough to make a change, but not enough to be transformed. They hit a low point, get scared, pull themselves together, and go right back to the same patterns with a new coat of paint. But you went further. You broke all the way through. And that is why what is coming for you is different. It is not a modified version of your old life. It is a completely new existence, one that could only be built on the foundation of your total collapse. One day it just stopped working. You did not plan for it. You did not pray harder or try a new strategy. You woke up and the craving was gone. Or maybe it was still there, but it felt hollow, like reaching for something that used to be solid and finding only air. This is the moment most people misunderstand. They think they finally got strong enough to resist. They think willpower kicked in. But that is not what happened. What happened is that God removed the desire itself. He did not just help you fight it, He took it. This emptiness is not depression, though it might feel similar. It is not apathy, though you might struggle to care about things that used to excite you. What you are experiencing is the absence of a false need. For years, maybe decades, your mind believed it needed that substance, that person, that behavior to survive. It built entire neural pathways around that belief. It structured your daily life, your identity, your sense of normal around it. And now it is gone. The structure collapsed, and you are standing in the rubble, unsure of what to do next. Jung would call this the dark night of the soul, but with a specific twist. It is not just spiritual crisis, it is psychological reorganization. Your unconscious mind is recalibrating. It is searching for a new center, a new source of meaning. The old one, the addiction, is no longer available, and the new one, your calling, has not fully revealed itself yet. So you exist in between, in the void, in the silence. And this silence is unbearable for most people. They rush to fill it with anything. A new relationship, a new obsession, a new distraction. But God is holding the space empty for a reason. And to tap into this empty space on a deeper level, to reconnect with the parts of yourself you've ignored or forgotten, take a look at the SIM Method ebook. It's a short, practical guide designed to help you balance your shadow and your light in just a few minutes a day. You'll find the link in the first pinned comment below. Because this emptiness is not punishment. It is preparation. It is the clearing of the land before the foundation is poured. You cannot build a new life on top of the old one. The ground has to be leveled first. Every attachment has to be examined. Every false source of identity has to be questioned. And this process feels like death because, in many ways, it is. The person you were is dying. The priorities you had are fading. The things that used to matter do not matter anymore, and nothing has risen yet to take their place. This is the most dangerous moment. Many people turn back here. They cannot handle the emptiness, so they run back to what they know. They pick up the addiction again, not because they want it, but because at least it is familiar. At least it gives them something to hold on to. But if you can endure this phase, if you can sit in the discomfort without rushing to resolve it, something extraordinary begins to happen. The emptiness starts to speak, not with words, but with knowing. A quiet certainty begins to grow, a sense that you are being guided, even though you cannot see where. God is not absent in this emptiness. He is closer than he has ever been. He is in the silence, in the stillness, in the space between who you were and who you are becoming. And he is waiting to see if you will trust him enough to stay here, to not fill the void with substitutes, to not numb the discomfort with distractions, to simply be empty, open, and available for what comes next. Because what comes next is not something you can create. It is something that must be given, and it can only be received by someone who has made room for it. The emptiness is teaching you something critical. It is teaching you that you can survive without the thing you thought you needed, that your identity is not tied to your behavior, that you are more than what you consume, more than what you crave, more than the patterns that defined you for so long. This realization does not come easily. It comes through days of waking up and not knowing what to do with yourself, through nights of staring at the ceiling, wondering who you are now, through moments of panic when you realize the crutch is gone and you are still standing. But you are standing. That is the miracle. You made it through the withdrawal, you survived the initial shock, and now you are in the hardest part, the part where nothing makes sense yet, where the old life is dead, but the new life has not been born. This is the space between, the transition, the cocoon, and it feels like nothing is happening, but everything is happening. Beneath the surface, in the invisible realm, you are being reconstructed, piece by piece, cell by cell, thought by thought. And when you finally emerge, you will not recognize yourself, because the person who comes out of this emptiness is not the person who went in. Every craving is a messenger. It carries information your conscious mind refuses to acknowledge. Carl Jung spent his entire career decoding these messages, and what he found was revolutionary. The things we run toward in addiction are never really about the substance or behavior itself. They are symbols. They represent something deeper, something we lost or never had. And our unconscious mind uses the craving to keep us searching, even if we are searching in the wrong place. When you reached for your addiction, what were you actually reaching for? Safety, control, connection, numbness? The answer is different for everyone, but the pattern is the same. You were trying to meet a legitimate need with an illegitimate solution. Your soul was hungry for something real, but your mind offered a counterfeit. And for a while, it worked. The counterfeit satisfied just enough to keep you from asking the deeper question. What am I really hungry for? What is this craving actually pointing toward? God allowed the addiction to exist because it was showing you something. It was revealing the shape of your unmet need. If you were addicted to validation through social media, the real need was for purpose and significance. If you were addicted to substances, the real need was for transcendence, for an experience beyond the limitations of your daily life. If you were addicted to toxic relationships, the real need was for unconditional love and acceptance. The addiction was never random. It was a clue, a breadcrumb trail leading back to your soul's deepest longing. But here is where it gets profound. That deepest longing, the one your addiction was pointing toward, is the same longing that connects to your calling. They are not separate. Your calling is the fulfillment of that need, but in its truest form. Not the distorted version the addiction offered, but the real thing, the thing your soul has been starving for since the day you were born, and the only way to reach it is to stop settling for the substitute. This is why God had to remove the craving, because as long as it existed, you would keep feeding the false need. You would keep choosing the easier path, the quicker fix, the shallow satisfaction. But your calling requires depth. It requires you to dive into the discomfort, to face the emptiness, to ask the questions you have been avoiding. What do I actually want? What am I here to do? What part of me have I been silencing? These questions do not have easy answers. They require time, silence, and brutal honesty. But they are the questions that change everything, because once you see what was hidden behind the craving, once you understand what your soul was actually searching for, the addiction loses its power. It becomes obsolete. You do not need it anymore because you found the real thing, or rather the real thing found you. It was always there, waiting beneath the noise, beneath the distraction, beneath the years of running. And now that the craving is gone, you can finally hear it. Jung believed that our neuroses, our compulsions, our addictions, they all point toward our unlived potential. They are the psyche's way of saying, you are capable of more than this. You were made for something bigger than this cycle you are stuck in, and the intensity of your craving is directly proportional to the intensity of your calling. The stronger the addiction, the stronger the purpose it was masking. This is why people with the deepest struggles often have the most powerful destinies, because their soul is crying out for something massive, something world-changing, something that requires every ounce of who they are. Your craving was not weakness. It was misdirected strength. It was passion pointed in the wrong direction. It was hunger that did not know where to find food. And now that God has removed the false target, that same intensity is still inside you. That same drive, that same capacity for obsession and commitment, but it no longer has an outlet. It is like a river that has been dammed. The water is building, the pressure is rising. And soon, very soon, God is going to break the dam and redirect that river toward your true purpose. And when that happens, nothing will be able to stop you. The craving taught you something else. It taught you about desire, about what it feels like to want something so badly that you will sacrifice everything for it. Most people never experience desire at that level. They live lukewarm lives, wanting things casually, pursuing goals half-heartedly. But you know what it is to be consumed. You know what it is to think about something every waking moment, to organize your entire life around getting it. And that kind of desire, when redirected toward your calling, becomes unstoppable. It becomes the fuel that carries you through the impossible, the fire that refuses to go out, no matter how many times the world tries to extinguish it. There is something inside you that has been waiting, not for years, for your entire life. It has whispered to you in moments of quiet. It has surfaced in dreams you forgot by morning. It has shown itself in the things that made you feel alive, the moments when time disappeared and you felt connected to something greater than yourself. But every time it got too loud, every time it demanded too much, you turned away. You reached for the addiction instead, because the calling was terrifying in a way the addiction never was. Your calling does not ask for part of you. It asks for everything. It demands that you step into a version of yourself you have never been before. It requires you to leave behind the safety of who you are and walk into the unknown of who you could become. And that is not comfortable. That is not safe. That is not something you can control or predict. So you ran. You found something smaller to focus on, something that kept you busy but did not require transformation. The addiction became your excuse. As long as you were struggling with it, you did not have to face the real challenge, the one that would change everything. Jung called this the hero's journey, but he was clear that most people refuse the call. They hear it, they feel it, but they do not answer. They stay in the familiar, the predictable, the manageable, and they spend the rest of their lives wondering what could have been. But you are not most people, because God did not give you the option to refuse anymore. He removed the addiction, the distraction, the excuse. He cleared the path, and now you are standing at the edge of the unknown with nothing left to hide behind. This is what it feels like to be chosen. It is not glory. It is not ease. It is the terrifying responsibility of becoming who you were meant to be. And the fear you feel right now, that tightness in your chest, that voice telling you that you are not ready, that is not a sign to turn back. That is confirmation. You are exactly where you are supposed to be, on the edge of something that will require everything from you, something you cannot do halfway, something that will either transform you completely or break you if you resist it. But here is the truth they do not tell you. The calling is not something external you have to find. It is something internal you have to stop running from. It has been with you the entire time, in your wounds, in your struggles, in the things you thought disqualified you. Jung believed that our greatest gifts are often hidden in our deepest pain, that the very thing we are most ashamed of contains the seed of our purpose. And your addiction, as painful as it was, showed you something essential about yourself. It showed you what you long for, what you are willing to sacrifice for, what you cannot live without. Now God is asking you to redirect that intensity, to take the same passion, the same commitment, the same relentless pursuit you gave to your addiction, and pour it into your calling. Because your calling needs that fire. It needs someone who knows what it is to be consumed, someone who understands obsession, someone who will not quit when it gets hard because they already survived something harder. You were not destroyed by your addiction, you were trained by it, prepared by it. And now it is time to use everything you learned in that darkness to step into the light. The calling has always been there, knocking. You felt it when you were young, before life taught you to ignore it. You felt it in those rare moments when you did something that made you come alive, when you lost track of time, when you felt like you were exactly where you were supposed to be. You felt it in the dissatisfaction that grew every year you ignored it, the restlessness, the sense that you were made for more, that gnawing feeling that you were wasting your life, and you were right, you were made for more. But the more was so big, so demanding, so far beyond what you thought you were capable of, that you could not face it. So you numbed yourself, you distracted yourself, you built an entire life around avoiding the one thing your soul was screaming for. But God is relentless. He does not give up on his chosen ones. He waits, he watches. And when the moment is right, when you are finally broken enough to listen, he removes everything that was in the way, including the addiction you thought you could not live without. Now the calling is no longer a whisper, it is a roar, and you cannot unhear it. You cannot run from it. You cannot pretend it is not there. It is front and center, demanding a response. And the response it requires is not words, it is action, it is movement. It is the willingness to take the first step even when you do not see the second one, to trust that the path will appear as you walk, to believe that the God who removed your addiction will also equip you for what comes next. The moment God removes your addiction, something shifts in the unseen realm. You might not recognize it immediately. You might still feel lost, confused, uncertain about what comes next. But deep in your unconscious, a door has opened. A door that was locked as long as the addiction existed. And on the other side of that door is everything you have been searching for, your purpose, your identity, your true self. Carl Jung spoke about synchronicity, the meaningful coincidences that appear when you are aligned with your deeper path. And one of the first signs that the removal has become a revelation is this. Things start happening that you cannot explain. Opportunities appear out of nowhere. People enter your life at exactly the right time. Ideas come to you in moments of stillness. Doors open that you did not even know existed. This is not luck. This is alignment. You are finally in the position to receive what has been waiting for you all along. But revelation is not passive. It requires participation. God removed the addiction, but he will not walk your calling for you. That is your part. You have to take the first step, even when you do not see the full path. You have to trust the process, even when it does not make sense. You have to act on the quiet knowing inside you, even when the world around you questions it. Because the revelation is not just about what you discover, it is about who you become in the process of discovering it. This is where most people hesitate. They wait for clarity before they move. They want the entire plan laid out before they take the first step. But that is not how callings work. They reveal themselves as you walk, not before. Each step you take in faith unlocks the next piece of the puzzle. Each risk you take in obedience opens another door. And slowly, sometimes painfully, the picture becomes clear. Not all at once. Not in the way you expected, but in the way that is perfectly designed for your specific journey. The removal of your addiction was not the end of your story. It was the beginning. Everything before this was preparation. The pain, the struggle, the years of feeling stuck, they were all building something inside you. Resilience, depth, compassion, the capacity to hold space for others who are suffering because you know what suffering feels like. Your calling will use all of it. Nothing was wasted, nothing was in vain. Every moment of your past is being redeemed in your future. And here is the final piece. The revelation is not just for you. It is for everyone your life will touch, the people you will help, the lives you will change, the truth you will speak that someone desperately needs to hear. God did not remove your addiction just to set you free. He removed it to set others free through you. Your story, your transformation, your willingness to walk into the unknown, it becomes a light for people still trapped in the darkness you escaped. This is the full circle. You were chosen not because you were perfect, but because you were broken. Not because you had it all together, but because you fell apart and let God put you back together in a new way. And now, standing on the other side of the removal, you understand something most people never will. That your greatest weakness was always meant to become your greatest strength. That your deepest wound was always meant to become your most powerful gift. That the very thing you thought disqualified you was actually the exact thing that prepared you. The addiction is gone. The shield has fallen. The calling is here. And you, whether you feel ready or not, are stepping into the life you were always meant to live. This is not the end. This is the revelation. And everything starts now. The revelation shows you something else. It shows you that you were never alone in this, that every moment you thought you were abandoned, God was there, working in the background, orchestrating circumstances, moving pieces you could not see, preparing people to cross your path at the exact moment you would need them. He was never absent. You just could not see him through the fog of the addiction. But now the fog has lifted, and you can see clearly for the first time in years. You can see how every mistake led you here, how every failure taught you something you needed to know, how every moment of pain carved out space inside you for the compassion you will need to fulfill your calling. Nothing was random. Nothing was meaningless. It was all part of a design so intricate, so perfectly timed, that you could not have planned it if you tried. And that is the revelation, that you were being guided all along, even when it felt like you were falling, even when it felt like you were lost. You were exactly where you needed to be to become who you needed to become. Now the real work begins. The work of walking out what has been revealed. The work of stepping into the identity you were always meant to carry. The work of using everything you learned, everything you survived, everything you became, to fulfill the purpose that has been waiting for you since before you were born. This work will not be easy. It will stretch you. It will challenge you. It will require you to grow in ways you did not know were possible, but you are ready. The removal proved that. You survived the one thing you thought would destroy you. And if you can survive that, you can survive anything. You can do anything. You can become anyone. This is your moment. The moment everything changes. The moment the pain finally makes sense. The moment you stop being a victim of your past and become the author of your future. The addiction tried to write your story. It tried to define you. It tried to limit you. But God had the final word, and His word is this: You are free, you are chosen, you are called, and nothing, absolutely nothing, can stop what he has started in you.